war.
What's going on, guys? RBG here, bringing you a video on something I haven't talked about in quite a while. A few months ago, I briefly mentioned the latest TF video game, Transformers Battlegrounds, and if you saw that video, then you'd know I wasn't particularly sold on the game. I felt like it didn't exude the qualities that I expected from a current gen title. Not to mention that I had preconceived notions on what I thought the next TF game would be like, so my expectations were really high. Now admittedly, it was a bit unfair for me to cast judgment on a game that didn't have my age demographic in mind, and I didn't even play it yet, so Outright Games reached out to me for a free code to get a fair shake on what I really thought about Transformers Battlegrounds. Firstly, we have to make it clear on what this game is and who it's tailored to. Even though the Transformers brand has amassed a huge audience range from kids to adults, the targeted audience has always been the kids, and Transformers Battlegrounds is aiming at that younger audience. But if you just so happen to be a parent or a longtime TF fan, you're welcome to join in on the fun. This game is obviously trying to introduce a new generation of gamers to the franchise, so I can't be mad. The more fans we get in on Transformers, the better. And the jumping off point Outright Games is using for this title is the latest show in the Unified Evergreen Universe, Transformers Cyberverse. So if you're a fan of the G1 or modern Transformers continuity, this game will have something that you like, at least from an aesthetic standpoint. I mean, given the fact that the show recently aired its season finale, it's the perfect game for those who just can't get enough of it. Something that sets this game apart from previous Transformers titles is that it's a tactical combat game as opposed to a brawler or shooter we are accustomed to. And it doesn't try to be anything other than that. It isn't trying to check off other things that'll make it one of the best TF games of all time. It's only trying to hit the mark on being a solid tactical game that goads players to make the right move on the battleground. What I give Outright Games credit on doing is at least expanding on the TF Cyberverse with their original story. As the evil Megatron closes in on the Allspark, Bumblebee and the Autobots need a new commander to help save Earth. And that's where you come in. You'll have to assemble a squad and roll out on a battle that will range from Central City to Cybertron. So you're tasked with building your own unique squads, unlocking characters, and unlocking new abilities. And I just want to give a heads up, while the Autobots will be playable in the story mode, the Decepticons won't. Instead, they'll be available in the arcade mode, which I didn't really have a problem with, especially considering the fact that there are a slew of other modes I've been enjoying, like the Decepticon Grudge match that can be played with a friend. There's also the Last Stand, Capture the Flag, Energon Capture, and Destruction modes. But getting back on topic with the story, I chose to play on the hardest difficulty to spice things up, which I honestly think any adult TF player should do because, as I mentioned, this game is targeted to an audience of kids. But if you feel the normal mode is good enough for you, then by all means play on that. You're a rebel, you do what you want. You'll have 6 Autobots to play with in the story campaign, featuring the likes of Bumblebee, who will be the main protagonist, Optimus Prime, Wheeljack, Windblade, Grimlock, and RC. Fans of the show will be happy to hear the voice actors reprise their roles as the respective characters, and their voice acting skills will be shown off through various cutscenes. I'm not sure if this is a thing in the Cyberverse show, but I found it hilarious how Grimlock all of a sudden has 2 distinctly different personalities, where he's the boneheaded brute in his Dinobot form, and an articulate gentleman in his robot form.
We're outnumbered. This will require ingenuity, cunning, and most of all,
Raw power!
As you can see, this game demands a lot of strategy, and I honestly wasn't expecting to be as invested as I was. Like, I was expecting this game to have lackluster AI, but I found myself regretting putting the difficulty setting on hard. If you don't utilize these characters the way they're meant to be utilized, you're gonna get your head caved in. You have to make sure each member is placed in the right spots on the map. If you look at the lower left hand side of the heads up display, you'll notice these 3 yellow dots above the health bar. These are called action points, and you'll need to monitor them wisely if you want to get through missions. For starters, you're only permitted to attack once per turn, which instantly makes you think twice about which attack you use. Some of these attacks range from a single straightforward shot that'll cost you 1 action point, but there are other powerful attacks that cost more, but depending on how you use them, they can be worth the points required. For example, I can spend 1 action point to move to a certain spot on the map, but I just so happen to have 2 more points to spend on a devastating attack that can knock back 2 enemies at once into a destructible object that'll cause more damage. Like, there's a huge learning curve that RPG enthusiasts will find themselves enjoying with this game. There are some moves that have status effects, like Grimlock's ultimate move, the Fury Charge, that has a high chance of stunning enemies. That's one of my favorite moves to use. You'll find that some characters play better at zoning. You have your sharpshooters like Wheeljack and RC, who don't necessarily have the best defense, but they play off of each other really well since they both have healing abilities that get them out of a jam, which is why they're some of my favorite members to pair up. And you have the more powerful brawler-like characters like Optimus Prime and Grimlock, who deal out a lot of damage to pesky Decepticons looking to outflank you. But I just gotta warn you guys that this game warrants a lot of patience. Since this is a tactical game that features a overhead perspective on this huge battleground map, you essentially have to wait for each character to make their move. And sometimes these can be a little aggravating since the enemy can be all the way at the end of the map and they do certain actions that take a long time to complete. But thankfully the developers kinda knew that this could potentially irk some of the gamers, so to remedy this issue they added a button to speed up the process. Unfortunately, this can only be done when the enemies are attacking. You can't do it after you put in a command for the characters you're playing with, so that's a bit of a bummer. Another thing you may or may not like is that you can't necessarily transform at will. Most of the time you will stay in robot mode. If you want to roll out in vehicle mode, you'll have to build up energon to perform a super or ultimate attack, or you'll need to have a character such as Windblade who just so happens to casually transform when you move her to a location on the map. But I'll give the devs credit for implementing it in a way that complements the tactical combat genre. As I mentioned earlier, this is the first time we've had a Transformers game with this style of gameplay, so it does enough to keep you engaged. Now you're probably asking yourself, should I get this game or no? And what I'll say to that is if you're hungry for Transformers games and just so happens to be a fan of TF Cyberverse, then by all means get this game. This is a different approach that hasn't necessarily been done before, and as I mentioned, it's not trying to do anything other than give you that tactical role-playing experience that you can enjoy with others. But if you're one of the ones who demand high-end graphics along with a AAA quality experience, you might want to wait until Hasbro teams up with a highly prestigious studio who specializes in that. This is the War for Cybertron shooter or Transformers Devastation hack and slasher you've been clamoring for since Activision lost the license to Transformers games. I'm also waiting for those types of games to return, but I also don't mind playing Transformers Battlegrounds while I wait for those. One of the biggest complaints everyone has about it is how it looks like a mobile game, and I kinda share that opinion, which is why I asked Outright Games to send me a code for the Switch. The Nintendo Switch is a platform that's mainly centered around the kid demographic, and since this game does seem like it fits more of a mobile game genre, it's the perfect title for me to play on the go while I'm away from home. Since I'm playing it on the undocked handheld mode, I'm easily able to bypass the below average graphics. On the flip side, I think the overall art style at least complements the Cyberverse art style, so I'm totally fine with it. The story mode is roughly around 7 to 8 hours long, which is surprisingly long for a game of this standard, and it functions perfectly. It's not a broken game like some of the earlier entries such as Rise of the Darkspark. I honestly don't see myself playing this game as much as I would some of the bigger titles, but I do see myself occasionally coming back to it when I'm on the go, especially if the developers are going to be adding more features to it in the near future. So I say if you like what you're seeing, then pick it up. And if you just so happen to have a Nintendo Switch and need something to kill time, then most definitely pick it up. But if you're a Transformers fan who has a more mature palate, then you might want to wait until Hasbro announces a game that tickles your fancy. But anyways guys, I wanted to give you my thoughts / impressions on this game since I only mentioned it briefly in a video. And this is a channel that talks about Transformers video games, so it was only right that I make a video giving you guys my impressions. Transformers Battlegrounds is available for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC Digital. And by the time I upload this video, the game should have been released, which is on October the 23rd. If you had the pleasure of playing the game, let me know your thoughts. And if you're one of the ones on the fence of getting it, let me know why in the comment section below. As always, I ask you to like or dislike the video. It doesn't have to be a thumbs up, it can be a thumbs down. Any feedback is good feedback and will only help me improve on my channel. But if you really enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it tremendously if you shared it with all your friends and followers on social media outlets. Sharing really makes a difference. But this is your boy RBG signing out on another video. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.